We had some decent volatility today with FOMC, but really not too much movement. I mean, a lot of the movement happened before FOMC on the Nasdaq. It was already up over 3% on the session. So didn't really get any super clean trade setups off, but overall there was some opportunity. We had a couple of big spikes on ES and NQ, especially towards the end of the day whenever we got some um, I, Iran news about Iran potentially attacking Israel because of a death of one of Iran's military leaders. So, however, that very quickly got bought up. ES just went down pretty much 35 points instantly, and then instantly reclaimed. And then we had the sell-off into close, only for it to continue higher after Meta earnings. Haven't even looked at what Meta reported, but I saw they were up 6%. I don't know what it's at now, but that does appear to have saved the market for the time being, and it's looking pretty decent tomorrow. For tomorrow, we had a lot of different things that I was looking for today, and we basically ended up flat. But I wanted to do a video real quick to just kind of talk about what I'm thinking all said and done after the meeting and everything. So for the FOMC meeting, all eyes were on September cuts. There's pretty much a 0% chance of a cut happening in July, and the market knew that, so that was pretty meaningless. I think the market was mostly focused on what Powell said in the meeting, and it was focused on hints about a September cut, and the market's still pricing in a 100% chance of a September cut, I believe. I haven't actually checked the Fed funds futures since FOMC, but I do think the market's still going to price in three cuts. September, November, and December, a little bit greater than a 50% chance, but basically a 100% chance of September. But some people are forecasting 50 points in September instead of 25, so that's really the only disagreement that I see as of now. So pretty insignificant for as far as what the Fed released and all that. Everybody knew what was going to happen, and that's kind of why I think we just ended up flat because, like I said, we were up a lot going into FOMC. We had the really nice move up after having a pretty bearish close yesterday. AMD earnings seem to have sparked a decent rally on the Nasdaq and in semis, so that really helped pull the market up, even though Microsoft remained weak and closed red on the session. So that's why I'm short Microsoft too. Um, anyway, so the main point that I was watching today, or the main level, was the 55.25 level on ES because of how many times it rejected all the way back from last week. It finally did reclaim today. I wanted to look for a long all day for a retest. That was my plan all day. It almost tested it at the open, which I wouldn't have taken that trade anyway since it was the first candle, but also didn't quite touch it anyway. So never got the opportunity to long today. I did take a short near the highs today after the FOMC meeting. My levels didn't quite hit, so this was one of my charts for the Nasdaq that I was watching. I was looking for either a retest of this area for a long or a short potential on this trend line that goes back to this uptrend from last week, and it didn't quite get to that trend line. It got close here and then kind of stalled out. I did take a short here, and that's when we got the Iran news, I believe, 100 points straight down on the Nasdaq. I didn't close my puts on this candle, unfortunately, but I'm still feeling okay about it, even though this kind of does look a little concerning. But 100 points down, 100 points back up. Actually failed this trend line on the first test with an upper wick here, but ultimately was able to break above it, and now we have this ascending wedge that on the 15-minute shorter term pattern. It's at the top end of that now, and it has broken above this trend line after a brief failure, and it's coming back up into these two horizontal resistance levels I have as well, which is just the previous low back from earlier in the month, and then this one all the way back from don't remember where, all the way back from June, and you could even say it goes back to early June. So I think this level is going to be pretty critical. If this trend line did break, I thought that this would be the last stop, and we're pretty much right on it now. So we'll see if we get the rejection here, or if bulls are able to push it up higher. And if they are, I kind of see this as the last line of defense for bears for the short term. I think that would probably lead to a squeeze that goes all the way back up to retest this trend line and the supply zone that I have here. So pretty critical spot right here, basically from this area to here, which is like 19.6K, basically up to 19.7. And if that area does not hold for bears, I think there's big potential for a rally that could come straight back into this trend line, which could be a great short too. This trend line is from the lows back in April. You can see that got broken, led to a big flush, and now we're retesting these lows on a retest. We'll see what happens from here, and then if you know if it does break, I'll be looking for a long potentially on a retest to play it up to this level. Um, and if it fails, then I'll just look to stay in my puts and potentially close down here or maybe even lower. So that's one of my NASDAQ charts. But then I have this other one too that I want to talk about, which is one that I've posted some ideas for on TradingView. I think it's really important. So this is a trend on the NASDAQ that has been holding for basically a full year almost. It's October of 23 when the bottom end started, and then July of 23 when the top end started. And this is the blow off top rally that I've been talking about, or at least that's what I suspect this is. I thought this was a pretty bearish fake out, and then we came back below the trend line and went straight down to the bottom end. And that's, in my opinion, the main reason for this bounce because of this trend line. We got a lower wick below it and an instant like 300 or 400 point bounce, or probably even more now. Yeah, so that's pretty strong reaction here on this trend line, and I think there's a good chance that it does go all the way back up to the top end of the trend, or potentially up to 20K before it fails. But I also think this is a pretty good area for it to fail as well because it's coming right into these previous lows. So this is kind of like I shared on the other chart, last line of defense for bears as well. It's just a different look at it. So that's NQ, and then if we look at SPY is very similar to ES. Had the uptrend break from April, like many other things, and held support here, but now has gone up for a retest. It did not quite touch it perfectly for a retest, but it did reject near the area. Did it fill that gap? I think it got close if it didn't. The gap is at what, 553.28. Yeah, so that gap got filled actually. So it filled the gap and rejected. Didn't quite hit the trend line, but that could very well be the top if we're going to continue lower. And then for Qs, I think looks like my watch list is messed up, but anyway, very similar thing, just like NQ and SPY uptrend from April. It held support here on the big dump after we gapped down below this trend line, but now it's retesting previous support that I would expect to flip to resistance now. But if it can get above this area, then there is a gap fill up here, and then also a trend line here that I would expect it to potentially go up and test. So that's the main things. And then yeah, like I said, ES is very similar. I do have this other trend line on ES that I think is very important too that I've also been posting about, which is this trend line that goes back to March. Whenever we first got the sell-off earlier or last week, I mentioned this trend line, thought it could be a good area for longs because we could get a bounce. We went well below it, but then pretty quickly recovered, only to fall back below it today or yesterday, and then today we got the rocket back up. So so far, bulls are holding pretty well with holding that trend line on the Nasdaq. In addition to this trend line on ES, it hasn't been able to remain below for more than a day. So decent look for bulls here, but can't forget that there was a pretty large dump all the way up here from the top, and there's a lot of work to be done before that is undone. However, a lot of this major uptrend's intact. The major uptrend on NQ is intact. It came close to breaking there, but it didn't. We have these previous highs on ES as well that coincide with this trend line, so very possible for a rejection. And then on VIX, so I was watching today for VIX to potentially hold the 16 area, which was some previous highs back here and here, and then it held as support on the retest. However, this time it did not hold, and it sold off quite a bit leading up to FOMC, which did end up foretelling a strong rally directly after FOMC, but then we got the dump into as Powell was finishing up, and it spiked all the way back up to 16. However, it failed there. So now it's kind of trending down again, and we'll see if it can break out and reclaim 16. This is some previous lows, which is also in addition to 16. Basically, this area to 16 was what I was watching. And it broke below, but it did quickly reclaim, so we'll see what happens tomorrow. If it reclaims 16 and keeps moving up to the 17 area for another test, I'd be very cautious with longs if that were to happen. And then I have this other VIX chart real quick too. So this is kind of more of the major trend line from here. So up near the 17 level as well, but looking to see this trend line get broken to the upside if there's going to be a major sell-off. So I think that's really important moving forward. Everything else on this chart is pretty similar. We have this trend here that it broke above, held on this retest, so it hasn't retested yet here. So there is a ways down that this could go and still find support. It could go all the way to 15 and find support. So going to be looking for that. VIX is very important to determine that. Where support may be for the NASDAQ and ES. Other than that, another note on the war thing. So I'm not saying the war is going to happen for sure, but I've been talking about war escalations for a good while now. I think we could escalate with NATO and versus Russia as well, along with the Middle East. Now that Iran's getting involved, potentially they haven't yet necessarily, even though they said they were. That is potentially dangerous because that could lead to Russia's involvement as well, and that will put a lot more people on edge, I think, than if it was just like Israel and Lebanon, like it has been. So things I'm watching for are commodities because if war does happen or it escalates more in the Middle East or with Russia or China or whoever, commodities are going to be a good play. It could be back like 2022 whenever Russia went to war with Ukraine at the beginning. There was a lot of volatility in commodities, precious metals flew up, the usual stuff. So I think that's important to watch for. We saw a brief moment of that in April as well when Iran bombed Israel the first time earlier this year. So that could be a repeat. I obviously do not want war to happen. I hate that there's war everywhere, but it's been building for a while, so I think we should be aware of it and be aware of what's going to happen if war does take place. But you know the jury's still out if it's actually going to happen. So for now, silver, as long as it can maintain above this trend line, I like it. Or sorry, this support here. I should probably make that green. I like it for a long, and then because of this trend break, it finally did have a really nice break here. But if it does break below this ascending channel and can't remain above this area, I think that's pretty bearish. So would hold off from there. So just kind of looking to see how it reacts from here. It could be a big trade because silver squeezes a lot, especially during war and times people expect metals to go up. And then oil is the other big commodity that I'm watching for now. There's all kinds of commodities, from wheat to whatever. There's always crazy things happening in the commodity market, especially during war. So oil had a really nice breakout similar to silver, broke the downtrend, is now retesting this previous resistance here that first was support and then flipped to resistance, and now we're right on it and stalling. So if this thing can manage to break out and maybe hold on a retest, that could be a good long opportunity. If it fails here, maybe it would be a good short on the retest. But for now, given the fact that we had such a nice breakout from this trend line, I'd say I expect levels to get broken to the upside. So we'll just have to see though. Oil and silver are dangerous to trade along with commodities. I would probably mostly stick to things like SPY and the Max 7 and stuff like that. So Nvidia, watching this 117, 118 level, it did have a big recovery, but until it breaks 118, I really can't say I'm super bullish on it just yet. And then the Max 7 also had this bearish wedge here that it broke below and retested and kind of stalled out, but now it looks like it's going to gap up tomorrow and potentially fill this gap. So we'll see what happens for there, but long way to go overnight. But for now, this does look bearish, like as of where it closed. However, with the after hours activity, it is probably more up here in this area, back up into this big gap that it had. So maybe it does fill the gap, maybe it falls by morning. I don't know, but going to be very important to be watching VIX and see if it can manage to break out here of this new little downtrend that it's got and hold this support area here, and then we have major resistance up there. So that's that's going to be critical. There could be some great opportunities. I really like the short of ES on this trend line for now. If it does happen, I would hope it happens during market hours so that I can actually short SPY and get SPY puts when it happens. But it looks like it might trigger overnight. We'll see though. Going to be important to watch all this stuff and keep up with Iran and Israel and what happens with war, and see how that affects the market. We still have more mega cap earnings tomorrow. Lots going on. Market is still digesting the Fed rate decision. There's all kinds of crazies this week. It's been some nice volatility this past day with a nice move up, but we'll see how it ends by Friday because things could look very different in just 2 days. So it's important to remember that and not get caught up in moves that happen in just 1 or 2 days. Things can change.